everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name's Molly, and today I'm going to be watching, reviewing, and reacting to Season 1, Episode 10 of The Expanse. Season finale, we have arrived at the end of the first season. Okay, so for those of you that watched my Episode 9 video know, I am going straight into Episode 10 immediately after finishing Episode 9. I was told that they really need to be watched together. They're really just one long episode divided into a couple of parts. And so with that in mind, I've opted to not do a lot of a recap review discussion either at the end of my Episode 9 video or now at the beginning of Episode 10, so that everything can stay fresh in my mind and it can be as though I just took a little 5-minute break in between a movie in order to set some things up and get another drink, you know. So, with all...
How long you figure we got? A couple hours, maybe. Hey, they got the radiation meds on that ship of yours? I hope so. A couple hours. We can make that.
See,
a couple hours.
that's what I was saying.
Places you don't even want to know about. Half that time till our ride leaves. You told your crew to take off without you?
Typical Holden.
Yeah. It's the fastest way to the docks. It's my first time on Eros. Right? First time anywhere. Go to the tool.
They're intentionally infecting them, but why?
I've never shot anyone. Half the system thinks you're some kind of outlaw hero, but you're really kind of clueless, aren't you? But thank God I got you here. Interesting day for you. In here.
Okay, so I mean, I get you were being sarcastic there, Holden, but honestly, yeah, thank God you have Miller there. You would have been dead before you even found Julie's body. Okay. He doesn't really seem to care.
Your optimism is inspired optimism. Those assholes. Earthers. Belters? You know what's up. You know the game's rigged. It's rigged from the start. Always has been.
We.
You know? Hey. You know, me and Sammy, our hands were small enough we used to reach in these machines, grab the chips that got caught in the chute. That was enough to feed a couple of street rats for a week. You know, one day your hand gets too big and you get stuck. Got a hell of a beating out of it. And naturally you evolved into cops. That was Sammy's idea. He said, you want to be an ass? You want to be a brute? Which one are you now?
Yeah.
Which one are you now?
He's seeing her.
Sorry, kid.
So I don't know if this is like a radiation hallucination or just, really her or what, but he seems pretty happy that he just had that experience.
Those drives were built at push shipyards, but for private contracts and not for us. And for the last 2 years, every last one of them has found its way to Tycho Station. Fred Johnson. Investigation into the OPA smugglers was instrumental in uncovering
All right, so this guy's involved, right? This guy's involved, and now he's trying to set up Fred Johnson.
Several weeks. I just reviewed the entire report myself.
You ass.
You all right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Frank's death has been a strain.
Oh, she's not buying this shit. She doesn't believe you.
We warn Maurice that they exploit the situation at their own peril. We crack down hard on Ceres and the OPA, and then we expose the truth and nail Fred Johnson to it.
I always like this side of it.
Make sure your kid keeps up. She's not my kid. Take care of her.
Okay. This is really interesting. So first, Amos says that they can come with them. Like, he seems to be like, yeah, no problem, which seems a bit not in keeping with his being just, you know, practical, trying to protect his shipmates sort of line of thinking that we've seen. And then this. So Amos have like a soft spot for kids. It's very interesting. Not necessarily something I expected.
Shut up, I'm thinking. It's an experiment. Oh, goddamn station.
They just want to create like a little plague
Gotta get off this rock first.
and see what happens.
Zip it, buddy. She knows what she's doing.
It's fucked up.
Let's get past these other assholes.
I don't think Holden... Yeah. I don't think he's like dealing with this very well. Killing people. I mean, Holden, you gotta understand. You're gonna die.
I got it.
These people are responsible for, to some degree anyway, they're participating in the slaughter of everyone on this station. And you guys are gonna die unless you can get past them. So, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I sound like Amos right now. But I think that might be a good thing for the moment, gotta say.
You can't get the docks that way. Tunnels are blocked.
You come with us. There's a hospital on level. What is it, doctor there?
Whatever it is, it's not a sickness.
In the trenches. We've been through this shit together.
Fine. Kick my ass when you get out of here. Turn me in. Right now, you gotta think about your crew. Okay. I'm putting my life in your hands. Okay? You're not a killer. You are a good man.
Tell me why I'm a good man. Say something. Your life depends on it.
Because you believe in mercy. Because you know that sometimes a man is pushed so far that he does things that he doesn't recognize.
That way.
I have a family.
A wife. And little kids. Goldfish. You tell me about them the next time I see you.
You can't leave me here. You've seen what's happening. This is a death sentence.
Yeah.
Holden?
I feel like this is a pretty big moment for him. Well, Miller's okay with it. I feel like I don't know if that's gonna make Holden feel any better. It might make him feel a lot worse, actually.
Passengers all tucked in below.
She's not gonna leave him.
How the hell did you guys get your hands on a Martian?
Not gonna happen.
Legitimate salvage. Yeah, it's fine by me. Let's get the hell out of here. Look, point me to a console so I can override the clamps.
We're not leaving yet.
What?
You heard me.
Hey, these mercs, they locked down all these ships so that no one could leave. All right, they got cameras on all the docks. They could be here any minute. We gotta push off.
I promised Holden 3 hours. He still has time.
He didn't make it. End of story.
We're waiting.
All right. Look, I understand. You don't think I'll shoot?
Oh. Oh.
You say wait, so we wait, boss. I'm just gonna put this below.
Okay.
If I could find Julie.
pants look like shit.
Welcome home from Amos.
Yes. I shot him.
Amos, maybe a little bit more of an explanation, you know? You know, he was pointing a gun at Naomi, threatening to kill her. He wanted to leave you all behind, something.
We will.
So it creates like these tentacle arm-like things and shoots down and sucks people up into it. That's how it like traps people and like, okay, so from what we've seen, there's a couple different, I guess, mechanisms for how this stuff works. This yeah. Proto-molecule, yes. A couple different ways for how it seems to work. Either you come into contact with it, and not airborne, but in some sort of like liquid form, whether from apparently having it injected, some people, or just touching it, which seems to be what Julie did, or other people on Eros are doing, and it spreads throughout you, it infects you, and then it seems to like just kind of parasitically take over your body and suck as much energy out of you as possible until it kills you, breaks down your body. Or apparently, once there's enough of it and it gets big enough, so like it was there or like on the reactor on the ship, then it like has the ability to do crazy shit, like imitate your shape and get these long tentacly things that come down and like snatch you and just suck you right in so that it can just eat you up the way that maybe it was eating up that one guy that we saw in the clip where Julie first discovered it in the first episode. All right, so there's obviously a variety of things it can do. Interesting. Okay, so that was episodes 9 and 10, season finale. Quite a lot of information acquired, and there also was a good amount of character development over those 2 episodes that we saw, but really a lot of pieces that we've gotten glimpses of over the last season have really all fallen into place here, so we kind of have a stronger sense of the overall story of what was going on. So, based on what I've seen here, basically, what has happened? All right. This corporate entity run by Julie Mao's father, okay, super rich family, was responsible for purchasing the stealth ships that later were used to kill the Canterbury and the Donager, okay. They were built in secret on Earth, so most people on Earth didn't really have a sense that that was happening at all. They didn't know what it was happening for, they didn't know why, but Ava Sorella's boss, I believe he's her boss, is most likely he's in on it. So he and Julie Mao's father, this corporation, were in some sort of agreement where they were planning to come together to build these stealth ships, and it was part of some sort of elaborate plan involving this proto-molecule thing that was discovered, and I'm guessing and assuming based on everything that's been said that it was originally discovered on Phoebe. Alright, so they figure it out, they discover this thing, and it kills a bunch of people on Phoebe. Somehow Julie finds out that her father is involved in some sort of that involves what she thinks is some sort of weapon, but she doesn't understand what it is. Okay? And, you know, she's already having negative views about her father, the things he does, about Earth in general, and somehow she comes to get the impression that this weapon is going to be used on the belt, which, I mean, we now know it is. And so in the aftermath of that, she leaves, she flees home, she joins the OPA, she tells Anderson Dawes what she knows, and she and a group of other OPA members are sent out on a mission to try to steal whatever the weapon is. So they actively seek out what turns out to be the Anubis, because they're trying to steal this thing. But they don't realize what the technology on this ship is. They don't know what they're getting into, and they end up just all getting killed except for Julie. They get brought on board the Anubis, and then the ship they were on is left as a trap to lure in the Canterbury, which is then exploded, killed. And then the Donager is also brought in, lured in after what happened to the Canterbury, and killed. And those things were intentionally done. These people that work for Julie Mao's father intentionally tried to draw in a freighter ship and then someone from Mars and blow those things up and kind of leave the impression that the Martians were behind blowing up the Canterbury. So they're intentionally trying to spark a war. All right, so on the one hand, they're trying to spark a war. And on the other hand, what we know is that they're trying to do this experimentation with the protomolecule on Eros. So their plans seem to be to inject a bunch of people on Eros with the stuff, then hit them with a bunch of radiation so that it goes overboard crazy, and then leave them and everybody else on Eros trapped, and to see what it does, to see how it spreads. And then they're just watching it from afar, off ship, this scientist guy who 100% needs to die, death. Okay, so it seems that there's these two components. There's the experiment, which they just killed a whole bunch of people, Belters, and there's the instigating war and conflict part of it. Now, I'm not 100% certain how these things come together, like how the war benefits them with this, quite yet. If it's mostly supposed to be like a distraction so that nobody really understands what they're doing or knows what they're doing, so that they can kind of try to cover up what they did on Eros, because obviously everyone's going to figure out that a bunch of people have just died, a whole station is wiped off the map. So I don't know if it's something to do with that, if it's something to do with like internal politics on Earth and an attempt by this guy, Avasarala's boss, to kind of do what he wants. I don't know. Not really certain yet what the purpose is of the overall war, but somehow obviously those two things are connected because they felt it was important to try and instigate a war. Alright, so that's the overall mystery. That, and then of course that Julie ended up getting off the ship, escaping because she was locked up, because she was boss's daughter and they weren't going to just kill her, and then all of them ended up getting eaten by the thing too, so she was the only one left to escape. That's how she sent out her distress signal, and that's how it brought everybody, all the pieces together on Eros. And I guess it just was a kind of luck for the scientist guys that she ended up there, because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to actually perform their experiment, because, you know, the rest of it was on the ship, which Holden and the crew blew up. So that's pretty depressing, actually, to think about. But alright, but so yeah, that's a lot of information that was put together in these two episodes. We really figured out the major details. Like I said, we're not really certain what the underlying reason for the war is yet, or at least I'm not. Maybe some other people have figured that out. I'm gonna have to take a little time to think about it. And then beyond that, of course, we have a lot of developing things with the characters. Really, you have Holden and Miller spending a tremendous amount of time, just the two of them. And again, you're seeing a lot of contrast between them, their viewpoints, their ways of handling things, which I do think is interesting because for me, you know, early on in this season, I had mentioned how the two of them seemed fairly similar in that they both kind of were like in an in-between space, so to speak. They didn't want to be on a side or choosing a side. They weren't necessarily identifying with a particular political group or background in the way that almost all the other characters were. And that was something that was pointed out to both of them by other characters on the show. So they have that similarity to them, and they also seem to have the similarity of being driven when they have something that they are pursuing or they have a goal, they're pretty, I don't know, adamant that they're going to do it. You know, people aren't going to stop them or tell them, no, tell them you can't do that. They're pretty sure of what they want to do and they go after it, though often in very, very different ways. But then, of course, it is the whole, I guess, optimism versus pessimism with the two of them, which was explicitly spelled out with Miller saying, oh, optimism, that's for, what is he said, that it's for idiots and earthers. Optimism's for earthers. But everyone on the belt, you know, knows that everything's rigged, so he's not going to have that outlook. So it's interesting. And then, but you also see their general attitude towards doing things. Now, Holden kind of calls out Miller and says, do you always go off half-cocked? Don't you, you know, think about it. There might be some other way to get out of the situation instead of just charging in there and risking your life. Which I thought was kind of funny because Holden is somebody who seems to kind of act on impulse very frequently without stopping and thinking things through. But maybe, you know, seeing someone else act that way and the negative consequences of it or the potential negative consequences of it is going to make him think a little bit more about his own behavior. I don't know, or else he's just not recognizing the hilariousness of that statement. But it was good. It actually prevented Miller from going off and getting himself killed. But the larger difference there between the two of them, how they're handling situations, you know, Holden says, you know, I've never shot anyone before. He seems to be extremely uncomfortable with Miller using force, you know, beating people up in order to get information and then actively killing people. Holden doesn't seem super comfortable with that. And he seems to be looking at Miller like, what are you doing? You know, who is this guy that I'm associated with? What is happening here? But as I kind of said, when I was doing my reaction, the guys that Miller ended up killing, yes, they were contractors, so they weren't, you know, the ones responsible for what was happening there in the sense that, you know, Julie Mel's father was, or that scientist guy, or any of the politicians on Earth that are involved in this whole thing. But they still were actively participating in the process of trapping a whole bunch of people there just to, you know, kill them. And they certainly would have gone out of their way to stop or kill Miller and Holden if they, you know, felt that that was their job. So that could have, it really was one of those situations where the kind of Amos point of view, practical, they're the enemy, really was maybe the best way to go. And then, so I think it is interesting that then you see Holden, after he's witnessing Miller killing these various people, he encounters the spy who pretty much gave them away and set them up to be killed there in that hotel if it wasn't for Miller. And he's trying to talk Holden down, trying to say, you know, I'm sorry, but you're not a killer, you're a good person, so you're not going to just leave me here because you know it's a death sentence, and just really trying to play on his caring, his emotional side from what he's seen before. And then you can kind of see that it's very manipulative, but of course, I mean, what are you going to do? You want to live, get out of that situation. He'll say, I'm sure, anything he feels he has to. But you see Holden kind of recognizing that, and maybe thinking a bit about the things that Amos had said to him previously, and then the things that he's seen from Miller there, and he chooses to leave him behind, to leave him there knowing that it is a death sentence. He hears that and he says yes, and he makes the conscious choice. And so it is kind of interesting to think about how he sees all these actions that Miller's taking, he sees these things, and he doesn't seem particularly happy about it at all, upset by it even, but then it's kind of rubbed off on him a little bit in that he's thinking, all right, well, maybe this is kind of necessary sometimes, and this person endangered and almost got all my crew killed, so am I going to bring him back again, or am I going to make this choice to sacrifice his life to be pessimistic, not optimistic, don't trust him, and do it, you know, for the sake of my people? And that's what he ends up doing. So it's kind of interesting to see him take that bit of a turn, which is different. You know, I was thinking about the idea that Holden his idealism or optimism might rub off on Miller a little bit and give him some sort of hope and reason to keep going, and it seems like so far that's not really what happened. It's maybe the opposite, though Holden is the one that said to him, you know, if you just stay here with her, you'll never find out who did this to her, and you can see that that's seemingly what Miller's goal is at this point in time when he's following around the scientists. So they seem to be impacting each other to some degree, but so far it almost seems as though Miller's impacting Holden more, which is not really what I expected. But I guess we'll see what happens when they're no longer in like a about to die life or death crisis moment, because now they're all together on the Roci flying out, they're receiving medical treatment, and they're following the ship that the scientist escaped on. So, assuming that they're going to be continuing the pursuit of this to try and find out where the scientist is going, put together the pieces themselves, understand why this happened. You saw Holden directly say to Naomi that he was making the choice to kind of make this his fight now. So I imagine in the aftermath of that, he's not just gonna change his mind, especially after everything that he's now seen. And so speaking of Holden, we see some things more between him and Naomi, which I found interesting. My continued belief that there's some underlying feelings going on there, and her refusal to leave him behind, and then his you know, kind of simultaneously saying, oh, well, yeah, she'll go, but maybe not really believing it at heart, because he thinks that, you know, maybe there's something there. And then you see the kind of connection between them at the very end of the episode there too. So I think we're going to continue to see that develop maybe going forward in the future. And then for Miller, character-wise, for me, you know, the big thing I was noticing in the aftermath of him finding Julie dead, and he's, you know, it's still just so sad. And you see him with Holden there at the end, and Holden says, well, you did find her, but obviously that's not what he meant. But that's not what he meant when he said he was hoping he could find her, obviously. But you see in the aftermath of that, obviously he's going out to try and find out who did this to her for some sort of revenge. But it's more than that. He's talking about, you know, Julie was an Earther. She died for the belt. She died for us. She died to protect Belters from exactly what's happening here. Or that's what she tried to do anyway, to protect them. And then he says, you know, we Belters know that the game is rigged. So he's really, to me, for the first time, actively starting to identify himself as a Belter, as one of the people who was seen here as superfluous, as just throwaway, as garbage that could be experimented on and sent to death. And I'm curious how much of that association is because of what he saw there about how the people are actually being treated and dying, how much of it has to do with him being with his friend again, that reminding him of his childhood, and how much of it just directly has to do with Julie's death and him being forced through her death to think about why she made that sacrifice, what she sacrificed for, and so maybe that's kind of pushing him a little more in that direction too, that was her quest, and maybe he's kind of, in some respects, sort of taking it up now that she's dead, which is interesting. If that's the kind of thing that pushes him to identify with the belt, is her death and loss, and him maybe kind of doing it in remembrance of this person he had come to love. And then, speaking of Miller, we also see that he actually sees her a couple of times. And again, I don't know if that's just because they were poisoned, radiation poisoning, he was kind of having his insides melting, losing his mind, maybe he was hallucinating, or maybe not. You know, he seemed pretty happy to see her in that first moment when she kind of appeared in front of him, so be curious to see if that's going to be like a long-term thing, that he's just kind of seeing her in his mind, still kind of being a presence that's guiding him even though she's gone now. So might be something that he needs. I don't know. And then just one other thing that I briefly wanted to comment on, that was Amos killing Miller's friend. So as I said, all right, I understand he's trying to protect Naomi, he's trying to protect the crew, he was pointing a gun at Naomi, he was threatening them, he was trying to leave Miller and Holden behind, even though Amos seemed to think that that was maybe the right thing to do. He's not going to put up with somebody pointing a gun at Naomi and threatening her and telling her what to do, so he shoots him. I get that, but I'm still kind of wondering, you know, maybe you could have disarmed him or just injured him or something. Maybe you didn't have to kill him. I understand that's kind of Amos's outlook on things. They clearly killed that guy who was infected, that they left behind. But it's obviously going to cause some issues because he didn't even explain to Miller why he killed him. He's just like, yep, I shot him. So, and I'm assuming that as they go along that they'll give some sort of explanation to each other so that Miller somewhat understands, but I feel like he's still going to be of the opinion that I am, that maybe there was another way to disarm him or something. Did you have to just go straight to killing him? And even if that did seem like it was the only option, I'm not sure how well Miller's going to take that, being as it seems like this was his only real friend. And I don't know, I'm conflicted about it because, as we know, he also was saying he was willing to leave Miller behind because he was scared and he was trying to get off there. But I just don't feel like Miller's going to be okay in any sort of way with his friend dying like that, even if it was justified. So I don't feel like that relationship, Miller and Amos, is going to be particularly good going forward, which is a shame because it seemed like Amos kind of liked Miller or was enjoying him, and they maybe kind of have the most similar of attitudes out of the small little group there, but that's kind of blown apart now, it seems. But alright, so the last thing that I'll mention is I know that some people have said that the books actually don't conclude like where the end of the first season did, that the first book continues on into the second season part way, and that some people were frustrated about this because they felt like, you know, that was a weird way to contain one larger piece of the story. And I can see how at the end there that some people might not have felt that there was a big, you know, season-ending resolution to a lot of things, but that's not really a big deal in my opinion. You know, most TV shows don't have big resolutions to all the storylines at the end of one season, and they resolved the storyline with Julie, the search for Julie, and for exactly what was happening, what is this thing, we have a sense of it now. And they brought the crew of the Roci and Miller together. So there's a lot of storylines that converged in what I feel like was a good place to kind of wrap up the season. And then going forward, we'll see what they do as a group together in the face of the information that they've now acquired. So yeah, excellent first season. I'm really enjoying watching this show so far. Very excited to keep going. Alright, so again, if you have questions, comments, please do leave them down below. As I had previously mentioned, I might not get to them for a little while because I'm worried about being spoiled. I don't want to be spoiled, but I will eventually come back to them and read everything that you guys have written. And I know that there's a lot of people that would like to chat with each other in the comment section. So please do feel free, anything that you have to say, leave them down below. Alright. Thank you so much for joining me and for listening to my surely very long ramblings to wrap up 2 episodes at the conclusion of this video. So sorry about the extra length, but thank you very much, and hopefully I will see you next time. Bye.